In a world where the tides of power have turned harshly, men now dwell under the iron grip of female dominion. Centuries ago, a newly ascended demon lord had proclaimed her decree to her followers with icy resolve: every male must submit to women and kneel at their feet in obedience. Soldiers murmured in stunned disbelief, grasping that the very fabric of their reality had been unraveled and reforged. Deep within a desolate stone prison, chains clinked ominously, their echoes drifting through the shadowed corridors. A stern woman in uniform towered over her bound prisoner, her voice laced with disdain as she observed his vulnerable state. "How pitiful and exposed you look," she remarked. Blindfolded and quivering, the captive writhed against his restraints while she mocked his desperate struggles. With a cold smirk, she added, "You're just a troublesome child who needs to be corrected." Abruptly, she closed the distance, her presence suffocating him as he thrashed in raw panic. Overwhelmed and shuddering, he could only listen as she declared, "This is your punishment." Her gloved fingers ignited with arcane energy, and she continued, "You dared to defy authority and escape." She brandished a device humming with crackling power, proclaiming his crime, a grave offense demanding retribution. Sweat beaded on his skin as she loomed closer, insisting, "Someone like you requires strict correction." Her smile turned glacial as she lifted the device higher, vowing, "You'll receive a severe penalty, one you'll never forget." He yanked futilely at his bonds, muffled pleas escaping through his gag as her boots scraped nearer. Teetering on the edge of hysteria, he begged for mercy, but her voice remained eerily serene. "Are you prepared?" Activating the machine with a flourish, she boasted, "You make the 99th in my collection." As she gazed at the aftermath, her cheeks flushed with a strange satisfaction, she murmured, "Wasting something like this almost feels tragic." Far removed from this grim tableau, the colossal world tree Yggdrasil cradled a secretive nursing home at its roots. An elderly man named Jesser rubbed his sore back, grumbling about how the foul weather aggravated his hips. He froze at the sound of a frantic voice calling from atop one of the massive roots. With a weary sigh, Jesser turned to see a young elf introducing himself once more. "I'm Miguel, the worker who keeps checking on you." Jesser furrowed his brow in bewilderment, muttering, "Why did I come here?" Miguel sighed patiently, reminding him, "This is the 6th time you've forgotten today." As storm clouds massed overhead, Miguel chided him gently. "You shouldn't wander in this weather. Please return to your room where it's safe." Jesser squinted down at the activity below, misnaming his caretaker again. "Is some event happening today, amigo?" Miguel replied gravely. "The gathering below is a unit of women recruiting new laborers. Even staff from our facility have been pulled in as extra hands, despite us being short-staffed already." Jesser watched a uniformed officer stride by and muttered bitterly, "This era of proclaimed female supremacy." Miguel echoed wearily, "It was decreed by the current demon lord. We're powerless to resist." As male workers were forced to the ground, Miguel added the harsh truth, "A man is branded a loser from the moment he is born." Jesser's gaze clouded with sorrow as he lamented, "How did men and women end up fighting each other like this?" Miguel placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, recalling, "I heard that in your time, men and women lived together in peace." Gazing out over the vast tree, Miguel added softly, "If you were still in power, the world might have turned out very differently." Abruptly, Jesser's eyes ignited with a surge of memory, and a vision erupted in his mind, two silhouettes clashing fiercely on a storm-swept cliff. A thunderous bolt of lightning crashed into Yggdrasil, flooding the sky with searing light and electric fury. Miguel staggered through the billowing smoke, shouting, "Jessa!" and gasping, "Lightning struck our perch!" He discovered a charred silhouette where the old man had stood and cried out in anguish, realizing Jesser had shielded him. As the haze parted, a dark figure shook off the embers and remarked calmly, "This is nothing compared to the lightning I've faced before." The figure emerged as a youthful man with piercing eyes and a steady smile, inquiring, "Are you all right, Miguel?" Miguel, now inexplicably taller and staring at his own altered hands, flushed in bewilderment, wondering who this stranger could be. The rejuvenated Jesser leaned in with a playful grin as Miguel stiffened, teasing, "Your face looks like you've seen a monster." Jesser stared blankly ahead, grappling with his unfamiliar youthful visage. Pulling out a pocket mirror, he gawked and marveled. I've become a handsome young man again. Perched high on the root, Miguel anxiously assessed Jesser's state, while Jesser flexed triumphantly, boasting. My back and hips don't hurt at all anymore. Closing his eyes with a broad grin, Jesser murmured. This miraculous second youth, it's truly wondrous. He suddenly thrust his fist skyward and marched forward, declaring, It's time to go. Miguel panicked, seizing him from behind and yelling. We're at the top of the world tree. You're being reckless, what's the fuss? Jesser chuckled. Where do you think I'm going? With a sly glance over his shoulder, his eyes hardened as he replied. It should be obvious. The current demon lord is wrong. Men and women must learn to live together. He leaped from the root with Miguel's scream echoing behind him, shouting, I'll give her a stern lecture as her senior. He landed with a resounding thud. The narration unveiled Jesser Garcia, the demon lord of 2 generations past, who had once united the world and its demons under his rule. Miguel adjusted his glasses in reverent awe, only to sweat drop as he noticed Jesser discreetly massaging his throbbing feet. Arriving in the vibrant town of Torrego nestled near Yggdrasil, Jesser smiled nostalgically, remarking, It's been so long since I last walked outside. As the streets unfolded before him, he observed how the once wood-and nature haven had evolved into something almost unrecognizable. Ducking into a narrow alley, he averted his gaze in flustered astonishment at a passing woman's boldly contoured attire. Scanning the throng, he registered with a blend of awe and discomfort that the city teemed with poised, captivating women. His vision blurred amid a sea of faces, tails, and horns, his inner voice screaming that women were absolutely everywhere. Clenching his fist with a lopsided grin, he admitted to himself that he had no intention of complaining. Pressing on, he admired their audacious fashion, muttering privately, In a world without men, their uninhibited confidence has grown astonishingly bold. Jesser wandered the city with a self-satisfied grin, marveling. With so many beautiful women around, it feels almost like heaven. His expression soured, however, upon spotting a woman parading down the street, a masked, chained man crawling at her feet like a burdened beast. Sipping from a tiny drink with a grim scowl, he muttered, This place is actually hell, cleverly disguised as paradise. Nearby women halted, whispering in alarm at the sight of a freely roaming male in their midst. As Jesser strolled casually along the wall, an off-screen voice panicked. We must report this stray man to Chloe-sama at once. Lost in thought, Jesser glanced ahead, recalling the old site of the demon lord's castle and assuming the current ruler still held court there. He mentally assessed the distant fortress, reasoning that no matter how formidable the new demon lord's forces had grown over centuries, they posed no real threat to him. Frowning at the altered streets, he muttered, There ought to be a path to the castle somewhere nearby. Spotting an elf woman, he flashed a beaming smile and leaned in amiably. Would this lovely young lady explain the city to me over tea? Her eyes widened in horrified recognition that the overly friendly stranger was a man. She recoiled with a shriek, pointing and shouting, A stray male! As he reached out, flustered, trying to soothe her. Left abandoned in the street, Jesser sulked, muttering, She didn't have to reject me in such an extreme way. Before he could recover, heavy cuffs clamped around his wrists from thin air, leaving him wide-eyed and struggling in shock. He stared skyward in disbelief, sputtering, A pair of restraints just dropped onto me out of nowhere. A massive furred enforcer slammed him to the ground with crushing force, expelling the air from his lungs. Face mashed against the cobblestones, he gasped in outrage. What outrageous thing is happening to me now? Pinned beneath the captor's bulk, he recognized the masked handlers from Yggdrasil as they declared, We've seized a stray male. Their commanding officer advanced with flushed exhilaration, exclaiming, Capturing this one will finally complete my 100th record. Draped over a soldier's shoulder like mere baggage, Jesser overheard the woman cheerily order, Take him back to the castle. While he noted quietly that this mishap offered an unexpected boon, later, he was unceremoniously dumped onto the unyielding floor before the imposing silhouette of the demon lord's castle, crying out as he hit the ground. Miguel leaped up in fury from where he too had been tossed, shouting, You should treat the old man more carefully. Chloe covered her mouth in mocking glee, retorting, Shameless liar, claiming to be elderly on top of being male. Flanked by her masked subordinates, she bellowed, "He must not know who I am." While he protested his sincerity and demanded, "Tell me your name." Meeting his gaze with a steely glare, she declared, "I am Chloe Lane, the law enforcer who governs this city's order." Shadows converged outside the cell as a voice muttered, "Allowing a stray male inside the castle was a serious mistake." Jesser, ears drooping in puzzlement, echoed, "Stray male?" The guards replied coldly, "An uncaptured male roaming free." Chloe sighed beyond the bars, lamenting, "The Demon Lord's army will make my life miserable if they discover this." Realizing his location, Jesser's eyes sharpened. He had been delivered straight to the current Demon Lord's stronghold. Seated cross-legged behind the bars, he inquired calmly, "What exactly is a stray male?" While inwardly confirming his strategy to allow capture had paid off. A handler clarified, "Any male servant must always be escorted by a mistress when leaving, it's strict law." Feigning wide-eyed naivety, Jessa smiled politely. "Chloe, explain this world's customs to a clueless country bumpkin like me." As chained workers shuffled past outside, he reflected somberly that long ago, men and women, though distinct, had stood as equals. Fixing Chloe with an earnest stare, he demanded, "Why has that equality between men and women vanished?" Raising two fingers with affected nonchalance, Chloe replied, "I'll answer out of obligation. What distant era are you even talking about?" A narration bubble heralded the start of her recounting. Everything had shifted around 300 years ago. The scene dissolved into a foreboding throne room, where a formidable female demon claimed the vanquished demon lord's seat, inaugurating her era. Her imposing form dominated the frame as narration identified her as the new demon lord, Mia Ale Garcia. Chloe noted, "This ruler bore the same family name as you," while Jessa strained to recall the connection. As the tale unfolded, Mia proclaimed that all males must kneel and obey, unleashing a malevolent curse upon them. Words etched into a void of darkness revealed the curse had stripped every man of his magic. A solemn narration elaborated that, bereft of power, the defeated males yielded, enabling women to claim every position of authority. Chloe smirked smugly. "Does my lecture make sense?" Jessa offered a faint smile, resolving to gather more intelligence. Studying her composed features, he determined that to reshape this warped realm, he must first eclipse her influence. With a sly curl of his lips, he appraised his revitalized form, certain it armed him for action at last. Before he could act, Chloe yanked him forward abruptly, leaving him off balance and wide-eyed. Leaning in until their noses nearly brushed, she threatened with chilling casualness, "I'll make sure you suffer severe punishment." Her eyes gleamed as she announced, "This will now be my personal amusement, like a new acquisition." Jessa met her glare defiantly, drawing her notice as she muttered, "Those rebellious eyes." Her lips twisted into a flushed, unsettling smile as she confessed, "Breaking resistant men is my favorite thrill." With a victorious flourish, she conjured a massive, serrated pair of magical shears pulsing with energy. Jessa gaped in horror at the hovering blade, shouting, "What are those sudden scissors?" Pointing at it proudly, Chloe boasted, "My unique magic lets me conjure any cruel instrument I desire. This device is reserved for punishing would-be assassins of the Demon Lord." She aimed the shears at his waist, commanding, "Comply, so I can end your defiance in one snip." Off-panel, a wry observation quipped about her disturbingly specific hobby. Cracking his knuckles with a bold grin, Jessa declared, "I dislike pain and flatly refuse to cooperate." The chains shattered as he wrenched them apart, stunning Chloe. Blushing with a thrilled shiver, she gasped, "You're incredibly strong." Her stare alight with unnerving fervor. Overwhelmed by perverse delight, she lunged, crying, "This is exactly the kind of man I adore confronting." Jessa intercepted her weapon overhead with ease, remarking, "Though I'm rusty from centuries of peace, an attack like this is nothing to me." A spectral dragon of force burst from Chloe's shears as Jessa braced, his cloak billowing in the gale. Chloe's eyes burned with frenzied triumph as she summoned a second pair of radiant shears and charged, convinced of victory. Steel rang and stone erupted as her assault was deflected, gouging a deep gash in the adjacent wall. Jaw slack at her fractured tool, Chloe spluttered, "My weapon broken?" Jesser smirked with infuriating poise, stroking his chin smugly as he warned. Don't underestimate the power hidden in my restored body. His gaze honed to a razor edge as he invited coolly. Test exactly what I'm capable of. Chloe's features contorted in humiliated rage, veins bulging as his words stung her pride. Throwing her head back in a jagged laugh, she admitted, I've never encountered a man as troublesome as you. She barked an order, hurling her masked beasts at him and vowing, forcing you to surrender will be immensely satisfying. One hulking slave barreled into Jesser, clamping his arms in a vice-like hold. As more piled on, their grips tightening mercilessly, Chloe observed with smug assurance. Even you can't escape their monstrous strength. Now, what harsh discipline shall I try with your arms sealed? Jesser, grin unwavering, conceded. Their grip is impressive. Though his eyes betrayed no fear. With a nonchalant twist and a resounding crack, he snapped the bonds and proclaimed, You were foolish to rush me. In moments, the beast sprawled unconscious at his feet, and he stretched languidly, as if invigorated by a satisfying exercise. Chloe recoiled as he explained. Your slaves were felled in an instant. Want the details? Advancing toward her, he revealed calmly. I was born without magic and forged my body through a secret martial art. He closed the gap abruptly, tapping her shoulder and urging. Experience that technique directly. Chloe tensed warily as his hands rose, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. His fingertip struck a precise acupoint on her side, sending a jolt that shattered her poise. Chloe stared in stunned incredulity, clutching her uniform as she realized he had somehow extracted an invisible bone from her chest. Jessa introduced coolly. The Allegaria-style bone-extracting martial art. I've just removed one of the 48 love bones. Her fingers quivered toward her lips as an alien sensation crashed over her, pupils contracting in shock. With a choked cry, she doubled over, body convulsing as her face ignited crimson. Gasping, My whole body is overheating, it feels like it's on fire. She staggered back while Jessa observed impassively. Panting, she confessed. Something is surging deep inside. I can't grasp what this sensation is. Hunched against the wall, she clawed at her uniform, mumbling. The heat beneath the fabric is throbbing unbearably. Collapsing to her knees, she shivered and whimpered as the torrent intensified. Tears streamed down her face as she babbled. Touching the feverish spot only makes the dizzying rush stronger, begs for it not to stop. Mortified, she wondered inwardly how she had lost control before the man she intended to break. Clutching herself in erratic spasms, she sobbed. The storm inside feels too intense for me to restrain. The narration clarified that his fabled technique withdrew a tiny love bone from one of 48 bodily points, inflicting no physical damage. A fanciful diagram depicted enamored figures, noting the art's origin in the notion of losing one's backbone to infatuation. Smirking with 2 fingers aloft, Jessa remarked, This level of stimulation is simply too much for someone so inexperienced. Breathing raggedly yet forcing herself upright, Chloe snarled. It was awful, not pleasant, and I'll never lose to a man. Suddenly, one masked beast lunged, slamming her down with a startled cry. Pinned and aghast, she stammered, What on earth do you think you're doing? A close-up of their gas-masked visages revealed erratic breaths, an ominous aside noting something amiss. Crushed under the beast's mass, Chloe wailed. He's far too strong, stop at once. Remember, I'm your superior. Her desperate shout rang out. Halt immediately! As the air thickened with chaotic, humiliating tension. Jessa regarded the turmoil coolly, deducing. My technique backfired on beast folk, whose impulses outweigh reason. Chloe's terrified eyes shimmered as she extended a feeble hand, gasping. Someone, save me from this disgrace. Positioning himself between her and the rampaging beasts, Jessa pivoted with a mocking grin, inviting. Focus on me instead. One masked fiend charged with blinding speed, forcing Jessa to evade with a startled yelp. Circling warily, he commented. They must have realized getting close means having their mysterious bones torn out. Their blank masks confronted him in taut silence, a grim note conceding that facing beast folk directly was no simple feat. Jessa's smile edged sharper as he balled his fist, hinting. Keeping distance won't save you. With an imperious tilt of his head, he proclaimed. Despite appearances, I'm absurdly strong. He surged forward in a streak, his kick pulverizing the beasts and hurling them amid flying rubble. Whirling past Chloe, he flicked his hand, scattering their gas canisters harmlessly. A tight shot of his fingers displayed two minuscule crystalline bones on his thumb. Holding them aloft, he explained, "I've plucked the so-called eruption bones from both, and now I hold their fate." As he clenched, their forms seized in violent spasms, sapped by an inexorable flood. A whimsical cross-section evoked a whale spouting endlessly, illustrating how the eruption bone triggered an unrelenting deluge until depletion. The beast folk crumpled in quivering exhaustion, limbs slackened. Jesser regarded them almost tenderly, assuring, "You'll live, it's the perfect remedy for overheated males." As the vapors dissipated, the female knight composed herself and inquired softly, "Your name?" He replied, "Jessa." Without prelude, she seized his collar and drew near, eyes shut in fervent determination. Breathing his name near his face, the narration observed that love bone techniques could do far more than debilitate. Blushing intensely yet locking eyes with him, she pleaded, "Become my master." A marginal note elaborated that a woman overwhelmed by such stimulation would pledge undying devotion to the extractor. Jesser watched Chloe grip her emblem with fervent loyalty, noting calmly that the moment he withdrew her love bone, her allegiance had transferred to him. Against the wall, he reflected inwardly that it felt disquieting to wield such subtle sway over another's will. Flushed and heaving, Chloe pressed close, vowing, "I'll serve you until my love bone regenerates, even if I reprimand you later for it." Jessa stared in astonishment, blurting, "Your hair has changed." Examining her locks, she observed quietly, "It's already fading back to white." Tapping his chin thoughtfully, Jessa frowned, pondering if his restored youth operated on a timer, urging haste. Over a montage of turbulent streets, his inner monologue mourned the world's profound distortion. Clasped hands symbolized his quiet resolve. No one had the right to dominate another. Observing a nearby couple strolling amicably, he smirked. Men and women should simply get along. He resolved that this twisted youth demanded a fitting reprimand. Extending his hand with urgent flair, Jessa commanded, "Take me to the demon lord immediately." Chloe stiffened at his demand, stammering, "I simply cannot comply." Her eyes lowered with guilty unease, sweat beading as she wrestled with her words. A stark inner thought lingered in the gloom. The demon lord's fate had already shifted.